National Bureau of Economic Research saying that there's a new study that basically says too many older workers in a society slows down the rate of entrepreneurship. Now, Michael, you say that ultimately millennials are better at creativity and better founders of companies.
It's not just me who says that, creativity is something that young people really specialize in. There are numerous studies that show that people in, let's call it young middle age, maybe early 30s, late 20s, maybe even mid 30s, are at this level of peak creativity. So what happens is when we have a younger society, these people learn these business skills from a younger age, and they're able to capitalize on that sort of peak creativity time.
But isn't there something to be said for the experience that an older generation is getting in the workforce, Kathy?
Absolutely. I think creativity and innovation is essential, but if you don't have the chops, if you haven't had skill and experience in planning, in getting the advice you need, in strategizing, in networking, in business development, all of it, then a great idea can actually go nowhere.
Because of how fast everything works, because of budget, we're seeing people having to work in a much more nimble way. Now, of course, baby boomers can work in a nimble way. Of course, they can learn these things, but it isn't necessarily inherently who they are and what they've learned in their training in college and in the workforce. Millennials are able to adapt in a different way that I think is particularly more relevant to where we're at right now.
Now, Kathy, you also bring up an interesting point where you say age bias in corporate America is actually forcing a lot of baby boomers and older generations to go work for themselves. And one interesting stat is that 50% of workers in the private sector will be independent by the end of the decade.
Things are so different now. You've read it, you've heard about it. 50-year-olds, when they're laid off, it's twice as hard for them to get back in the corporate world. So what does that mean? They have to be innovative, they have to be creative. And I work with thousands of mid-career people who are saying, what can I do? What can I generate? What can I create? This age bias is actually, it's got a silver lining. It's allowing us to think of new ways to be of use in the world.
And sort of forcing innovation out of an older generation.
Absolutely.
Which brings an interesting point. You also mentioned that younger people tend to be probably less realistic about the work involved in a startup.
Yeah.
And Michael, do you think that sometimes millennials are a little bit too optimistic when starting a company or running a company?
Yeah, in fact, I would say that optimism is something that is really great for our generation, but also plagues the generation.
And do you have advice that maybe some millennials can actually learn more from an older generation in their workplace or with a startup?
Do we have another 2 hours? Millennials, they have so much excitement and they just come out of the gate running. What they don't have is temperance, and and some of us older folk are looking for a little respect, a little appreciation, an understanding of what you don't know. That I just don't see. Slow down a bit, take a breath. It's so wonderful that you believe 100% in this idea, but you have to vet it, and you have to get advisors who've been there. You don't have to take it all in, you need a filter, but slow down a bit.